In the summer of 326 BCE, Alexander the Great stood at the edge of India, having conquered everything from Greece to the Indus River. He was 30 years old. He had never lost a battle. His empire stretched across 3 continents, and his army refused to go any further. For 8 years, they had followed him across deserts, through mountains, into lands they'd never imagined. They had bled for him, they had killed for him, they had watched their friends die for him. Now, standing in the monsoon rains of India, exhausted, homesick, terrified of the unknown ahead, they said no. Alexander begged them. He promised more glory, more wealth. He reminded them of everything they'd conquered together, but his soldiers didn't want more glory. They wanted to go home. Alexander retreated to his tent for 3 days, refusing to eat, refusing to speak, hoping his army would change their minds. They didn't. So he turned back. The greatest conqueror in history, forced to retreat not by an enemy, but by his own exhausted men. 2 years later, he was dead. Some say from fever, some say from poison, some say from a broken heart, because he had run out of world to conquer. This is the story of what drives a man to conquer the world, and why it's never enough. The boy who would be Achilles. Alexander wasn't born to be a conqueror. He was made into one. His father, Philip II of Macedon, was a brilliant military strategist who transformed Macedonia from a backwater kingdom into the dominant power in Greece. His mother, Olympias, was intense, mystical, obsessed with her son's destiny. She told Alexander he was descended from Achilles on her side and Heracles on Philip's. Divine blood ran through his veins. She told him he was meant for greatness, not ordinary greatness, immortal greatness, the kind that lives forever in stories. Alexander grew up with this impossible burden, the expectation that he would surpass not just men, but legends. Philip hired Aristotle to tutor his son, not to teach him philosophy for its own sake, but to prepare him to rule the world. Alexander read Homer's Iliad obsessively. He slept with a copy under his pillow alongside a dagger. He memorized every line. He didn't just admire Achilles. He believed he was Achilles reborn. But Achilles died young, gloriously, immortally. Alexander absorbed that lesson too. By age 16, he was leading cavalry charges. By 20, his father was dead, assassinated at a wedding, possibly with Olympias's involvement. Alexander became king of a fractured, dangerous kingdom. His first act was to crush rebellions with such brutal efficiency that the other Greek city-states learned a lesson. This boy king was more dangerous than his father. He was 20 years old, and he was just getting started. The psychology of conquest. What drives someone to conquer? Power, wealth, glory. Alexander had all of that by age 25. He had defeated Persia, the greatest empire on earth. He had more gold than he could spend. His name was known from Greece to India. But he kept going. Here's what historians miss. Alexander wasn't conquering to gain something. He was conquering to prove something. To prove he was greater than his father. To prove he was worthy of divine ancestry. To prove he was Achilles, Heracles, the son of Zeus himself. But how do you prove you're a god? You can't. Because the moment you stop, the moment you rest, you become human again. So Alexander never stopped. After defeating Darius III of Persia, he could have declared victory and gone home. The Persian Empire was his. But Darius escaped, so Alexander chased him across deserts, through mountains, until Darius was murdered by his own men. Even then, Alexander didn't stop. He kept marching east, into Afghanistan, into Central Asia, into India, places the Greeks didn't even have names for. His soldiers started asking, "Why? We've won, we're rich, let's go home." But Alexander couldn't articulate why, because he didn't fully understand it himself. He was chasing something that couldn't be caught, the approval of a mother who saw him as destiny incarnate, the shadow of a father he both loved and resented. The ghost of Achilles, who died young and lived forever. This is the psychology of conquest, an external campaign to resolve an internal void. The cost of greatness. The further Alexander went, the more he changed. In the beginning, he was the young king who fought beside his men, who shared their hardships, who remembered their names. He was wounded in nearly every major battle, shot with arrows, stabbed, hit with rocks. He fought from the front, not the back. His men loved him for it. But as the empire grew, Alexander started to believe his own mythology. He began dressing like a Persian king. He demanded his men bow before him. Proskynesis, the Persian custom that Greeks found humiliating. He married Roxana, a Bactrian princess, and took Persian nobles into his court. His closest friends, his Macedonian companions, felt betrayed. This wasn't the Alexander they'd followed. In 328 BCE, during a drunken argument, Alexander killed Clytus the Black, one of his oldest friends, the man who had saved his life at the Battle of Granicus. Alexander was devastated. He locked himself in his tent for days, weeping, refusing food. But he didn't change. He was too far gone, too deep into the role he'd created, too committed to becoming something more than human. The tragedy is that in trying to become immortal, he lost his humanity, the unwinnable war. By the time Alexander reached India, his army had marched 11,000 miles. They had fought in climates they'd never experienced. They had seen elephants in battle, massive, terrifying creatures that trampled men and horses alike. At the Battle of the Hydaspes, they faced King Porus and his war elephants. Alexander won, but barely. His beloved horse, Bucephalus, who had carried him across the known world, died from wounds suffered in the battle. Alexander wept. He founded a city in the horse's honor, but he wanted to keep going, beyond India, to the edge of the world, which the Greeks believed ended somewhere past the Ganges. His army said no, not out of cowardice, out of exhaustion, out of sanity. They had followed him to the ends of the earth, but there was no end. As long as Alexander lived, there would always be one more battle, one more mountain, one more kingdom. They wanted their lives back. When Alexander finally agreed to turn back, he was furious. He saw it as betrayal. But really, it was the moment his men chose survival over glory, the moment they chose to remain human while their king disappeared into legend, the empty victory. The journey home was worse than the conquest. Alexander took his army through the Gedrosian Desert, one of the most brutal environments on earth, as punishment for refusing to go further. Thousands died of thirst and heat. More men died in that desert than in all of Alexander's battles combined. When they finally reached Babylon, Alexander tried to plan new conquests: Arabia, North Africa, Western Europe. He couldn't stop. In June 323 BCE, after days of heavy drinking, Alexander fell ill. For 12 days, he burned with fever. His men filed past his bed, desperate for one last look at their king. He couldn't speak. He could barely move, but he recognized each of them. When someone asked who should inherit his empire, Alexander supposedly whispered, "To the strongest." He died on June 10th. He was 32 years old. His empire didn't survive him. It fractured immediately, torn apart by his generals in wars that lasted decades. Everything he built, the cities, the alliances, the dream of uniting East and West, collapsed. All that remained was the legend. What Alexander teaches us: Alexander conquered the known world, but he never conquered himself. He spent his entire life running from expectations, from inadequacy, from the fear that if he stopped, he would realize he wasn't divine at all. Just human, just a man. This is what drives conquerors. Not the love of victory, but the fear of what comes after victory. Because victory means you have to stop. You have to face yourself. You have to answer the question, now what? Alexander never had to answer that question. He died still chasing the horizon. And maybe that's what he wanted. To die like Achilles, young, glorious, immortal. Never having to face the ordinary world, never having to be just a man. But here's the tragedy. The men who followed him didn't want immortality. They wanted homes, they wanted families, they wanted to grow old. Alexander gave them glory. But glory is cold comfort when you're dying in a desert for a man who can't stop conquering. The question isn't what drives a conqueror. We know what drives them. the same insecurities, fears, and hungers that drive us all. The question is, what would Alexander have become if he'd learned to stop? If he'd learned that greatness isn't measured by how much you conquer, but by knowing when enough is enough? We'll never know. Because Alexander never stopped. He conquered the world, and the world conquered him.